From Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, and the home of hot chicken, it's the Rick Altizer Show. Sit back, buckle up. Rick will talk with the movers, shakers, and creators who put Christ in Christian entertainment. He's a man who's clear so the world can hear. Here's Rick Altizer.
Hey, thanks for joining me today. Hey, today I have a special guest on. He's a director, and he directed the new movie Church People. I just watched it last night with my wife and loved it. I'd like to welcome to the show Christopher Shawn Shaw. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
We found each other on Facebook, didn't we?
Yes, sir.
We were,
which is actually how I met Thor Ramsey, the star of Church People.
Okay, you met him there as well.
I met him on Facebook as well, yeah, in 2009.
Fantastic. So I watched the movie Church People. It's got, as you said, Thor Ramsey, Stephen Baldwin, China Phillips, her husband William Baldwin. You got two of the Baldwin brothers. Amazing.
Yeah, how about that?
And man, I just really enjoyed the movie. Great job on it.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Incredible team efforts. I was surrounded by people who knew what they were doing.
You got to love that.
Yeah, that certainly helps.
So when was the film completed? When was it finished?
It was actually finished in August of 2016 as far as shooting. And then I think we had a cut. We were shopping around towards the end of 2016. And then it took, close to 5 years before it was in theaters.
Wow.
It came out in theaters last year. It was a 3-night Fathom event deal. And then it just came out on DVD this year.
On DVD. And people can get more information by going to churchpeoplefilm.com.
Correct.
My wife and I were so struck with was just how funny this was. It's rare to find something that's funny, but yet it was so gospel-centered. The gospel was front and center in this thing. You weren't shying away from talking about Jesus and his death on the cross and the importance of the gospel in our churches. And, so many times people try to be funny and they kind of make it Christian light. And you really didn't shy away at all. I thought that was an amazing blend. Tell me a little bit about that. What was that process like?
Well, Thor was the original writer on it. We had 3 writers on the film: Thor Ramsey, Bob Sands, and Wes Holula. And Thor was the original writer. He did about 30 drafts himself. And then the draft that we actually ended up shooting was a collaboration between Thor and Wes. But yeah, it was, he had this, one of his church plant pastor friends called him up one day and was like, "You're never going to believe what this church," it was a major church. You know what it was. "You're never going to believe what this church is doing for their Good Friday service." And he's like, "What? What are they doing?" "They're going to crucify a live human being." He's like, "No way." Thor's like, "No way. Come on." Like, I'm looking at their social media now. So they go to investigate it further. It turns out it's not going to be a real crucifixion, but it's going to be such a graphic passion play that they had all these trigger warnings, like if you faint at the sight of blood or whatever, but for a split second, Thor and his pastor friend thought, you know what? The American evangelical subculture has gotten to such a point that they actually believed that some pastor would try to do a live crucifixion on a Good Friday service. And that's where the big idea came from. Now, he had already had a slice of life youth pastor kind of script. It was called Youth Group. And he had some development talks with a guy at Sony about the script itself, just notes on the script. And one of the notes Josh Nadler at Sony gave Thor was, this is great, but you need a big idea to bring all these characters together at the end. And so when he heard about what he thought was going to be a live crucifixion, he's like, "That's the big idea." Yeah, I got it.
It was such an amazing commentary on how far away our American church has gotten from the gospel And,
Yes.
phrase, so much is just, why don't we just talk about Jesus' death on the cross? Isn't that enough?
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of trying to top last Good Friday service with some new stunt, let's just talk about Jesus. How do you top the resurrection?
That's pretty amazing.
Bigger than the
thing.
Resurrection? What are you going to do bigger than that?
Pretty amazing. So no, but it was so well done. It was so funny. So I've had I've worked with Shawn Pierce. I did her 3 films that were Fathom events. I directed those, and so I have had a little bit of the comedy is different. How you cut comedy, how you pace comedy. It's very different. And I noticed, I went on your IMDb. I noticed you've got a lot of comedy background. I thought that just the way you timed and paced the comedy on this was just so well done. It was just really, really, really well done. Probably the funniest thing I've seen. So the funniest Christian thing I've seen. And
wow, that means a lot.
Oh man, it really, really, it was done so well. Talk to me a little bit about your background in comedy and what's different about making a comedy film, from a regular film, and how you pace it, how you cut it, how you direct it. What makes this different?
Well, I actually have a bit of a testimony around that. Back in around 2009, I was kind of in a funk. I came out of a bad ministry situation, and I was in my bachelor pad at the time. I'm married now, so no bachelor pads for me. But I was in my bachelor pad at the time, no roommates, and I was just feeling in a funk. And I sensed the Lord was doing something in my heart, and I sensed I need to laugh. And so I started renting. I had a subscription to ChristianCinema.com, which at the time it was like Netflix, where they would send you DVDs. And so I just went to their comedy section, and for the most part, I went in alphabetical order, and I wasn't super picky. I just like comedy after comedy after comedy. And early in the alphabet is, guess what? Bananas Comedy.
Yes.
Which is hosted by Thor Ramsey. And so I start I'm consuming these Bananas Comedy DVDs. I'm watching the behind the scenes. I'm watching the televised show. I'm watching the Raw show. And I start thinking, I'm going to try to connect with these people I'm seeing on these different DVDs. Like, there was Thou Shalt Laugh, and there was Bananas and stuff like that. I'm going to start connecting with them on Facebook. This is around 2009. And so I reached out to all these different Christian comics on Facebook, and they connected. And I was doing my own quirky little goofy things with my goldfish and my prosumer camera. And I was sending it to these people. And Thor liked what he saw. And I'm making a very long story short, but we met on Facebook. He saw some of my solo work, and we ended up doing a short film in 2010 for the 168 Film Project. Shout out to them, 168film.com. Definitely a great way to get started in filmmaking if you want to hands-on in acting or filmmaking or cinematography or whatever, 168film.com. But here's what I'm getting at. Back then, I used to think if I'm going to do something faith-based, it has to be heavy and meaty and, all these scripture references. And don't forget the crying. There has to be crying, right? Because it's a faith-based film. There has to be dramatic crying. So that's kind of where I was. But when I started to connect with comedians, and when Thor and I worked on our first short called Skip Listening, I realized, hey, you can actually have a comedy with heart and with, poignant laughter, I like to call it. So, and to me, that's what church people is. It's poignant laughter. It
absolutely.
is funny, but it definitely has heart. And like you said, it doesn't shy away from pointing people to Jesus.
Which I just love. I love the way you did it. I was just, the whole time I'm watching him going, this is so good. The acting is so good. And that's the director. That's the director. So let's talk more about kind of under the hood. What are some of the skills that you use to do comedy that would be different from how you would direct, a dramatic piece?
Well, I think that's a really good question, and I'm not exactly sure how to answer it because I tend to direct comedy or dramas similarly as far as my approach to communicating with the actors. But one thing I did do with a number of the actors before we were on set filming was I asked each one individually, like, how do you like to be directed? Because there's different styles of directing. There's the results-oriented directing, and then there's discovery directing, where you discover with the actor the outcome you're going for. And so that was one thing that I did, was I asked the actors, how do you like to be directed? But then also I think it's very important to give the actors room to play. It wasn't super staunch. You got to, every word on the script. As a matter of fact, there's a number of, ad-lib things in there. So I think it's important to let them play. And I like to see what the actor brings to the table and then tweak it from there.
Yeah, and you had so many great actors in this movie. I mean, it just went on and on. You had, of course, Stephen Baldwin, which we've seen a lot of him.
Yep.
You had China Phillips, which was,
Yep.
from Wilson Phillips, and my
Yep.
wife follows her on her Facebook and just loves her.
Oh, yeah. She's got a YouTube channel called California Preaching.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
and that's the YouTube channel. My wife just loves to follow her, and William Baldwin is her husband, and so they're both in it. And so that, obviously they had the connection with Stephen Baldwin. And then you've got Donald Faison from Scrubs, and he played Petey on Remember the Titans.
Yep. Donald Faison, Joey Fatone from NSYNC.
Yeah, Joey Fatone from NSYNC. He was amazing. That was so funny. His character was so funny. And there was even a cameo from Mr. My Pillow, Mike Lindell.
That's right. Well, he funded the film, so you fund the film, you get a cameo kind of a thing.
That's amazing.
But what I love about that cameo too is that it comes when you least expect it. Like even people who know he's in the movie, like it comes when you least expect it. But I also want to give a shout out to a couple of other amazing actors. We had Aaron Cahill, who played Carla.
Right.
We had Michael Monks, who played Pastor Skip, who's a veteran TV and film actor. He's been in it for decades. And, a number of people like Andriana Manfredi and Clancy McCartney. And, a whole,
you had
bunch of people.
You had great actors, but, the acting was so good. So many times you can have great actors, but if you don't have a director who knows how to work with actors, it doesn't always help. And
well, that's true, but I also got to give props to the script, because you could have an A-list cast and an A-list director, but if the script stinks, the movie's not going to be that great.
Yeah, and that script was tight.
I've seen those kind of movies before.
Yeah.
So it really starts with the story and the script and how good that is.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have those elements there and you have actors who know what they're doing, it isn't that hard to direct good actors. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that was such a tight script. I mean, it played so well. It was so funny, but it was tight, and it didn't really let up. It was just funny the whole way through.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad you and your wife enjoyed it, and I hope your listeners enjoy it as well.
Yes, and people can find out more about this movie. Church People is the name of the movie. The DVD is available now, and you can also find places where you can stream it. And you can get information by going to churchpeoplefilm.com. So I also noticed a good friend of mine is Bob Elder. He's been on the show with Collide, and I noticed that they were involved as well in helping you get some distribution. How did that come about?
Yeah, that was kind of a long process. I wasn't super involved in the distribution side of things, as far as like I didn't connect the dots.
Okay,
as they say.
So you directed it, and then kind of said, "Okay, here you go."
Well, I mean, like distribution's not my forte, so there were other producers who worked on that, and Collide was actually aware of the movie, I think somewhere around 2018, and when we were still trying to find money to distribute it, they were sort of producers involved at the time were sort of involved, talking with Collide and so forth. And so, but they came on as our distributor, and they were also our marketing people. And if you love that trailer, shout out to Collide Media Group, because Collide Media Group is behind that trailer.
I love the trailer. Thought the trailer was great.
They have an editor named Scott Edge, who did the trailer, and of course with input from the team at Collide, and they knocked it out of the park.
So were you involved in the edit on this movie at all?
I got to do a director's cut first, and then the cut that you ended up seeing was sort of based off of the template of my director's cut. So yes, I got to sit 10 days with our editor. Shout out to Emmy award-winning Michael D. Schultz. I sat with him for 10 days, and we had a movie that was it was close to 2 hours. And I think what you saw was about 96 minutes.
Right, yeah,
so,
which is what you need. You don't need a 2-hour comedy movie.
You don't, but I will say, if I could be so bold, the close to 2-hour version was a funnier version than what you saw.
Oh, wow. Now, is that version available on DVD?
It is not, unfortunately. That version was never like color corrected and sound mixed and stuff like that. So
sure, right.
It's probably on a hard drive somewhere, but it would be very painful to watch because it wasn't polished in the in the post-production process.
Well, you're listening to the Rick Altizer Show. My guest today is director Christopher Shawn Shaw. We're talking about the movie Church People. The DVD is out now, and you can also stream it and watch it. My wife and I watched it last night and just loved it. So funny and so poignant, as he says. Very, very Christ-focused and an amazing message about the gospel. So it's a great family movie. I highly, highly recommend it. And you can get more information on this film by going to churchpeoplefilm.com. So Christopher, I'd like to talk about, if you don't mind, you talked about how difficult it was making this thing and then getting it distributed and getting it, into a Fathom event. And can we just talk a little bit about the cost of Christian films?
Yeah,
yes. And the struggle to distribute and how expensive it is to distribute.
Yes.
And just some of can we just talk about that a little bit? Because I'm wanting my listeners to just, I rant on this all the time. If you want Christian films, you got to go support them.
Absolutely.
Because they're not cheap to make. And if we don't
speaking
support,
my language, bro.
If we don't support Christian films, there's not going to be any Christian films. And so, and there's so many ways now for us to watch things without having to pay any money. But listen, that's not going to help a filmmaker who had a huge budget and who had to get all this money put together to get it marketed. The United States is a large country. To tell everybody in the United States about something is expensive. So can you talk a little bit about that, your challenges, and just let me hear. You go ahead and get on the soapbox for a bit because I've been on it for a while, so I'm going to get off, let you do it.
Well, you're speaking my language, Rick. Thank you so much for bringing that up. First of all, I'd like to say there's pretty much no such thing as an overnight success. So if you consider this movie successful or by whatever measure that is, it didn't happen overnight. I got attached to this project in 2010. Shortly out, it was around the time I was working on my first short film with Thor. He told me about this script he had. We didn't get it shot until 2016. Why, Mr. Director? Because there wasn't funding. So, well, let me rephrase that. There was funding. We just weren't connected to it. But once, and then even when we had Stephen Baldwin on board, he came on board officially in 2013. Even with him on board and, letter of intent, we had another letter of intent from another actor who's big in the Christian market, but didn't end up being in the movie. And funding still took like 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. So, and our budget, our budget, I've heard actor Kevin Sorbo say this on other interviews where the craft services budget, the food budget for a regular Christian film that's $3 or $4 million or whatever is the cost of the film to make the film is that, but the craft services on Pirates of the Caribbean
right
is the same amount. You know what I mean?
The amount of money they charge just to feed the crew.
Correct.
For most movies is what
of cast and crew and so it's just crazy. So my point is this: Church People was somewhere around $2 million, and it was a long road to get there. And then once you have the film in the can, if it doesn't already have distribution, then you got to find distribution. Oh, and by the way, distribution costs money too.
Lots of money.
So, yeah. So it typically costs about the same amount as it does to make the film. Now, I don't think we ended up having the same amount as we had to make the film. So we made work with what we had, and Collide was very helpful with that, and Fathom Events was helpful with that. But it costs money to distribute. So when you see like a Star Wars movie that costs $200 million to make, it's like another $200 million just to market it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you see the marketing on all the websites you go to, and every time you flip a channel, there's another advertisement for it. That costs money. So yeah. So it if you love to see more Christian content, you have to consume the content that's already there. And if it does show up in the theaters, it's really, really, really important to go on the opening weekend, if at all possible. Yes. Because the opening weekend box office tells the theaters whether or not to keep the movie longer. I mean, how long has Top Gun been in the movie theaters?
Right.
Why is that? It's because swarms of people went to see it.
Right. Yep.
And kept going to see it. And I just saw a Facebook post, I think today, of somebody who finally saw it, So is it still, I don't know, is it still in the theaters? I mean, how many months ago did that come out?
Yep. Yep.
But if you have low turnout on opening weekends, it's probably not going to be in the theaters that long.
Now, you were in three nights on a Fathom event? You had 3?
Normally Fathom events are 1 or maybe 2 nights. So we had 3, which was great.
When was it?
It was actually March of 2021, so it was just around the time theaters started opening back up from the thing,
No, I know. We were. I did Show Me the Father for the Kendrick brothers. I directed.
Yeah.
That.
Okay.
And that came out in theaters September 10th of 2021, and we were like the first Christian movie out of the box, and it people still weren't ready to go back. So March of 2021, I can only imagine.
March of 2021 was, so that was, what? Yeah. How many months is that? 5 months earlier or something?
I can only imagine, how people just weren't ready to go back to theaters yet. That's such a...
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure we haven't made our money back yet, even when you calculate everything, the DVD and all that stuff. So we really need more eyeballs on this. And again, if you want to see more content, and if you want to see more content from Thor and me, here's another shout out to Thor. In the past year and a half, Thor has been collaborating with other writers, and he has, I'm not kidding you, about 8 more comedy scripts.
Amazing.
And still working on them. So we have other films ready to be funded.
Well, Christopher Shawn Shaw, how can people connect with you?
My website is ChristopherShawnShaw.com, and Shawn is spelled SHAWN, so ChristopherShawnShaw.com. And my social media handle is @DirectorCSS. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, @DirectorCSS.
And they can find more information by going to churchpeople.film. No, I'm sorry, churchpeoplefilm.com. My bad. Churchpeoplefilm.com. And you can find out about the movie and about the DVD. And you know what? We're out of time. We're running out of time here.
It goes so quick.
It sure does. I just want to tell you what a great job you did, how much I appreciated this. After I saw it, I told my wife, I'm putting him on the show. That was so good. I got to get him on the show and talk about it. So, thank you so much for making this great film. And what's up next for you?
We have a script that is optioned by Collide Productions. Bob Elder started a production company with Barry Landis this year. And so we have an optioned script with them, which means it needs funding, but it is being taken seriously. And like I said, we have several other comedy scripts that Thor's collaborated on. And we're looking for the next feature we can do. In the meantime, I just did a 168 film project virtually, remotely, so there was no on location, and that is with Victoria Jackson and Aaron Folan.
I saw that on your. I saw that on your. So again, people can go to ChristopherShawnShaw.com ChristopherShawn.com, SHAWN, ChristopherShawnShaw.com, and also churchpeoplefilm.com. Christopher, man, what a blessing. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I super appreciate it, and God bless you and your audience.
If there's a show you've missed, you can go to my website, rickaltizer.com, and catch up. Or you can listen to my podcast in iTunes or wherever you hear your podcasts. Just search for The Rick Altizer Show. Altizer is spelled Altizer. I want to thank you for listening. Hey, would you tell a friend about this show and share the love? Be sure to check us out again next week as we discuss how we communicate the gospel through media to our culture. Let's be clear so the world can hear. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.